Hello and welcome to Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Mark Gillen of the 128th District in Berks and Lancaster counties. Our families and spouses should be our support system and a source of strength, but for some, those they are closest to can be a danger to them mentally and physically. Fortunately, our community has an organization that provides support to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, with the hope of someday eliminating them altogether in Berks County. Joining me today is the Executive Director of Berks Women in Crisis, Mary Kay Bernosky. Mary Kay, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We were just talking before we came on air about children and daughters and women in particular, because I have 5 daughters. And the subject of the conversation had to do with ear piercing.
Right.
And I know you have a couple children of your own.
I do.
And,
one of each.
One of each. And raising daughters in particular always can carry with it unique challenges. And the subject of our conversation that had to do with ear piercing also had to do with differences in raising ladies as well as gentlemen.
Right.
Your work is regarded as being with women, but
True.
I would say that it extends beyond the panorama of women. You're working with members of the entire family. We say Berks Women in Crisis, but if a woman is going through a crisis, there's a lot of different players involved.
Absolutely. None of us live in isolation. We also have men that are victims of sexual violence as well as domestic violence, and the family members and the friends are also struggling with the issue as well. How do they support the victim and maintain contact? Because we know isolating the victim is one of the easiest ways to maintain control.
And so you're working holistically with a group of people.
Absolutely.
You have a woman who's in crisis, you have a crisis situation. So I would think that the skill set that is required to work in a holistic sense with a variety of people there has to be unique.
It is, and we have a number of different programs. So we do individual counseling, and we look at that through a trauma-focused lens. So understanding that the people that are coming to us have had a terrible event happen to them, and their physiological reaction to that is normal, but it reads as abnormal because they are always in that kind of heightened alert. We talk about it a lot in terms of returning veterans, experiencing that trauma, that PTSD. So we look at it in terms of that with our victims, understanding and helping them understand that their reactions are normal, but we can try to reframe that and help them process information more appropriately. But also we counsel significant others. So we work with families, we work with partners. Very often the partner is not the abusive person, particularly when you're talking about sexual assault. They might be a victim of sexual assault in another context, and now this partner is dealing with all of those things as well. And parents especially, when we're talking with child victims, parents feel very guilty when they understand that their child has been victimized. And they want to know what they could have done and how they could have missed this and how they could have trusted this person who took advantage of them. So all of those things come into play.
Not just because I have 5 children, but something that I notice with ladies is there's always a substantial amount of counsel available, whether it's solicited or unsolicited. I've mentioned, when one of my daughters brings something to my attention or having a discussion, suddenly we have 4 additional mothers that want to weigh in. How challenging is that when you have so many different contrary voices out there offering advice to distill it to the best possible advice?
Well, what we try to do is have people understand when they're supporting the victim, the most important thing is to let her make those decisions. She's more aware of the danger she faces. Now, we will ask her some questions to try to help us understand that danger. We'll ask about how often the violence occurs, if there's physical violence. We'll ask about how controlling the behavior is. Are you able to make your own decisions? Do you have your own access to money? Can you go somewhere without getting permission? Those kind of things that kind of lead us to know how dangerous this situation might be, but we have to trust that she knows her situation better than others. So if she tells us, I'm not ready to leave or it's not safe for me to leave, we don't say, well, you have to leave this relationship. We'll do a safety plan with her in the context of that relationship. And we'll work with significant others to have them understand you maintaining contact with her is the best thing you can do. You supporting her is what you need to do. Don't tell her she has to do X, Y, or Z. We know that very often leaving the relationship is when it's the most dangerous. In Lebanon County, our neighboring county, we just had the case of the woman who was shot down after filing for protection from abuse. And I know that you are all looking to study the PFA Act, which we are grateful for. We always want to look to make sure that we're doing the best that we can for victims. So we know that it's not always one thing that can be done to stop or to lessen the danger.
I think for a lot of people, they hear the protection from abuse order, and obviously there's going to be a cessation at that point. But what we're hearing loud and clearly, not only from you, but from others, that's not the case.
It's not always the
Right.
case. It can be a very good tool for a lot of people, but they have to be amenable to the court system. For people who are not, for people who really don't care what those repercussions are, it's not. And that's what we have to look at. What else can we be doing to ensure that safety when we have people who are just willing to flout court orders? You and I would not do that. If there was a court order that said we had to do X, Y, or Z, we would make sure that we complied. But for some people, that's simply a piece of paper.
How difficult is it to bore down, get the facts, get the information? Somebody may be trying to protect a significant other and you suspect there's more going on here than meets the eye. That process can be very arduous.
It is. And you can't expect people to tell you all of their, for lack of a better term, embarrassing and kind of dirty laundry. We're all conditioned to keep those things private. So it takes some time. We have to develop a rapport. One of the most important tools that we have as advocates is the legislation in the PFA Act that says what you tell me is completely confidential. No court, no legislature, no judge in any context can require me to tell you, to tell anyone what you've told me. So that gives them the protection that they know that when they're talking to me, they're only talking to me and not another system. So that helps getting that information. She can understand that no one else is going to find that out. Whether it's embarrassment, whether it's danger, or whether it's other issues that might be illegal on her part, that she understands that that's not going to be used against her. We're going to talk about how to keep her safe.
Can I get a little background information
Sure.
from you, because it's going to lead up to the next question? What do we need to know about Mary Kay? Where did she come from? How did she get involved in this work?
Well, I'm originally a Schuylkill County native. I went to college at DeSales University. I went to law school at William & Mary. And then I was working at Schuylkill County government for a long time and volunteering at Schuylkill Women in Crisis, which is a domestic violence agency in Schuylkill County. And I realized that I really liked doing that better than the job I was paid to do. So I went back to school and I got my degree, my MBA at Alvernia. And this position became open at Berks Women in Crisis, and I applied, and fortunately the board of directors at the time decided I was the best person for the job, so I've been there for now 11 years. I have 2 children of my own. I have a daughter who's in college and a son who's in high school. So, and I'm in the community, so they're going to the same schools. We see all the same people, and I think that's important. I'm part of the Berks community now. I understand some of the needs, not all of them. Obviously, we need to listen to our constituents and have them tell us what is going on in their own communities. And so we try to make sure that we're representing all facets of Berks County. We're a diverse population. So we want to deal with the people that are in the city and their needs, and we want to deal with the rural communities and the young women who are on our college campuses. And I keep saying women because we know that that's the majority, but it's not exclusively. Okay. And we are really trying to reach out to make men understand that we know that they can be victims and that it might be hard for them to call someplace called Berks Women in Crisis, but we want them to, and we will be there to support their needs as well.
You've been in this business for a while, both as a volunteer and as a professional. How has it changed? Well,
I think a couple of things have changed the dynamics of how we provide services. We still do the basics that we've done for 40 years. We're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. And Berks Women in Crisis was one of the founding members of the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And I'm sure you know the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence was the first coalition in the country. So we really were cutting edge at that time. And those women put together a roots of safety. They had a hotline and they had a safe house. And we still do both of those things. We have a hotline and we have immediate shelter for victims, up to 50 people every day. Since then, we've expanded that it's not just only 30 days, that it might take a little longer for people to gather the resources they need to live more independently and safely. So we have Bridge House. We also have counseling programs that are more informed by the trauma that the people have experienced. So they recognize that it's not always about telling the same story. It's about how are you perceiving information? How can we help you understand that what's happened to you might have changed how your brain is functioning. So how we can help you reframe those things. And we're doing more prevention work. We know that we can't possibly serve the numbers that statistically they tell us exists. If 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men in Berks County came to Berks Women in Crisis, we would not have the capacity to serve them. So we want to work on prevention. We're doing programs in the schools. We do programs that are called Shifting Boundaries, where we're talking to youth about their own personal boundaries, where they feel safe and where they don't feel safe. We do it first in the context of their schools. We ask them, tell us where you feel safe at school and where you're not. And not surprisingly, they'll tell us the bus, the hallway, the lunchroom. Now, come up with a plan of how you can stay safe. And then they bring that to their administrators. And very often what they're saying is, we want some more adult volunteers to be around in those areas so that we can feel a little more safe in school. And then we talk about it personally, how you can establish your own boundaries and then how you respect others. Because that's fundamentally what we're talking about here. Respect yourself and respect others.
The next question, a little more delicate nature. You're on the front lines, born of necessity. How do you avoid being a casualty?
Well, you know, we can't always. Unfortunately, I mean, we always tell people don't be a victim. And unfortunately, we don't choose to be a victim. You know, we are designed to form relationships. So people fall in love, and I tell this all the time. If the first time you went on a date, he punched you in the face, you probably wouldn't go on the second one. But that's not how it happens. It's very insidious. It starts out very romantically, and a lot of the things that we think of in terms of new romances, like we want to be together all the time, for young people, that texting constantly, always on social media constantly, all of those things seem like normal initial relationships, but sometimes that can turn very quickly, and it becomes about keeping you from other people, when a partner is making you feel guilty when you want to do things other than with the partner, when they make kind of belittling comments like, oh, you looked better yesterday than today. You know, it's kind of those sneaky things that start to undermine your self-esteem, and then they kind of isolate you from other people, and then they start to say, you know, I'm the only one that really cares about you. You should trust me. And then we start maybe some of the physical violence and things like that. And by that time, you know, you've kind of lost a piece of yourself, and it's harder.
It sounds very subtle, Mary Kay, that it sneaks up on people.
It does. It does. It really, it's not always easy to find. And so when we work with teens and young people and people in colleges and talking about what might be a dangerous behavior, because that's what we want to talk about, the behaviors, right? Not the person. We're not saying this person is a demon or this person. We want to talk about those behaviors that you can identify and work on to understand where the red flags are. So, you know, we try to talk about those things. Okay, so you like texting all the time in social media, but does he make you feel guilty, or does she make you feel guilty when you're doing that with other friends? Can you say, look, I just want to go and do this with other people today, I'll talk to you tomorrow, without there being guilt or recriminations, those kind of things.
During the course of protecting people, do you ever find yourself, maybe not you personally, maybe vicariously, someone in your organization finds themselves in a very difficult situation? Well,
sure. No one is immune. This is domestic violence and sexual assault crosses all demographic boundaries, educated, uneducated, wealthy, not so wealthy, whatever racial or ethnic background you come from. crosses all of them. Now, the cultural norms also are a little different, so we have to be respectful of that. Like you said, for a lot of people, the nuclear family is not the cultural norm, so the extended family is helping to make the decisions, and that's okay. You know, we just have to work within that to understand what are healthy and not healthy behaviors. But if your support system is the aunts and the uncles, then we want the aunts and the uncles to be involved and engaged. So we can't immunize people, unfortunately. We can just educate and let people know that we're there and that we're not there to judge. It's not your fault if you've become a victim.
But there's a certain amount of that in the psyche of people. I deserve this?
Always. It's amazing to me that even after all this time, one of the first things a woman would say is, I just feel so stupid and I thought it was only me. And that's what we have to start working on, is realizing that this is not an individual issue. We've been trying to say this for 40 years, but I think we've kind of come to that conclusion when it happens so pervasively and across so many lines. It's not an accident. It's not a one individual problem. We have to look at it systematically and look at it in terms of education and look at it in terms of how we are treating each other.
Before we go to break, I want to ask you a big question.
Okay.
You're under a lot of pressure. You're under a lot of stress. And so your staff, likewise, are under the same kind of pressure and stress.
Sure.
Where does Mary Kay go? Where does your staff go to get help?
Well, we actually do a self-care plan with all of our staff. We sit down with them during certain times of the year and talk about self-care, and we provide opportunities for that. So we'll do yoga and meditation. We'll bring someone in. We do a retreat every year where we maybe have chair massages, and we let people know that it's okay sometimes to say, I just need a day off. You know, that's the one thing as a nonprofit that we can do. We can try to make them be a little flexible. We don't want you coming to work if you're not feeling your best, and if you just need to take a walk, you leave and you take a walk. I mean, but we do recognize that we have an obligation as an employer to offer those opportunities, but as the employee, you have an obligation to kind of check in with yourself and let us know what you need.
What works best for you?
I read.
Okay.
I read murder mysteries. It's terrible, but that's what I do.
Okay. Well, we'll use that as a jumping off point when we get back here, and we're just going to take a very brief break. Let's take a quick break. Legislative report will return in a moment.
Did you know that Violet Oakley was the first female artist to receive a large commission for artwork done in a United States Capitol building? In 1902, Joseph Houston, designer and architect for the 3rd Harrisburg Capitol building, commissioned Violet Oakley to paint murals for the governor's reception room. He believed that Oakley's contribution would add interest to the building and act as an encouragement of women of the state. Prior to beginning her work for the Capitol, Oakley set out to England to conduct research for her murals. Upon return, she decided to center her artwork on William Penn and the founding of Pennsylvania. Oakley made sure that Penn's ideals of justice and peace could be seen throughout her work. In 1906, she completed 13 murals titled The Founding of the State of Liberty Spiritual and was placed in sequential order around the governor's reception room. These murals were some of the first to be installed in the Capitol. When Edwin Austin Abbey, another artist for the Capitol, died in 1911, Oakley was offered another opportunity to create murals for the unfinished Senate and Supreme Court chambers. Her work on the Senate murals, including International Understanding, was completed by 1919. Oakley then completed the Supreme Court murals, including the Divine Law, by 1927. Oakley is said to be the principal artist for the Capitol, with a total of 43 murals on display. She remains one of the greatest muralists in the United States. Now you know.
Did you know that the chamber of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives contains a painting depicting the 24 hours of the day? Located in the center of the ceiling, the mural, titled The Hours, was created by artist Edwin Austin Abbey. This wonderful masterpiece charts the setting of the sun, moon, and the many stars that grace the heavens. 24 maidens, who each represent an hour of the day, begin each day in light and gladness and ends in solemn drapery carried on still shoulders. Now you know.
Welcome back to the program. I'm State Representative Mark Gillen. If you or someone you know has suffered from domestic violence or sexual assault, please continue watching this important program. Berks Women in Crisis is set up to help those who find themselves in these situations, and you'll see some phone numbers on your screen throughout this program that will put you in contact with their services. Again, joining me is Mary Kay Bernosky. Mary Kay?
Hi.
Off camera, we talked a little bit about my own background. I was a correctional officer at one period of my life. I'm currently still 25 plus years emergency medical technician. At one point in my career, I headed up a counseling staff. There were times where I had to put my arm around somebody and say, you may not feel like you need a day off or some time away, but it probably would be in your best interest. Were there occasions where you had to do something similarly?
Certainly. There's people at work that do that. Now, I don't have a lot of people that directly report to me.
Okay.
We have an associate director, but she would be doing that, and she would, you know, have a conversation and say, just want to check in with you, is everything okay? And you do know that, you know, you have time to take off, and, you know, it might be a good idea, and if there's something you need me to cover for you while you're gone, I could do that. Because the one thing that happens in our work, people feel very connected to their clients. That's something we have to watch out for all the time, and sometimes we think that we're the only one there to help. And we have to be aware of that vicarious trauma, that compassion fatigue, that if we leave for 5 minutes, something terrible is going to happen. So we have to always be kind of on guard for that and let other people know there's others out there that can help take up that slack.
I find that people that are involved in your line of work have to have substantial peripheral vision. One avenue looking in the direction of client services, another avenue making sure that you've got somebody properly matched on your side of the equation. Are there times that you say, this is not working as well as we'd like to it or optimally, and make some changes?
Sure. Sure, and we have people that work more with systems than clients, trying to educate, for example, law enforcement, the judges, you know, those kind of systems that we know people have to navigate, welfare systems, job training, you know, all of those places where our clients are going to need to be to establish themselves and establish their goals. So they might be working with those people rather than directly with clients, or maybe we do that as a respite. You know, kind of give you a break from dealing with always hearing some of these stories. It might be nicer to deal with the bigger picture and see that there are success stories, that there are ways that people are managing on their own.
Because this is not a business relationship or a political relationship, there seems to be an enormously strong bond that will develop between the person who needs your services and your organization, and they're not going to be cut off in the same way as they might be in a business or retail operation.
Right.
How is it that you're able to maintain those relationships and then develop the next strata of relationship for someone who comes in the door today? It just seems like all those responsibilities are going to be very heavy and building up over a long period of time.
Well, and our counselors work to try to determine when to do closure with the client. So they might be seeing someone every week and then eventually decide, you know, now that's not necessary. However, because these are issues that you deal with over the course of your life, we have people that might come back because they're in a new relationship now, or they've had a child, or, you know, they've moved jobs. Something has happened in their life that now they need a little more support, and they'll come back for a time. We have support groups for survivors, where the survivors meet that we just kind of facilitate. They're actually led by the survivors, and they're talking about what's going on with them and how they are managing, and they're kind of helping each other figure that out. So it just all depends on where people are.
A diagnostic question. What is the propensity for somebody who's in one of these failed relationships to be back again and they're involved in the second or third failing relationship?
Yeah, I mean, we know anecdotally it happens. It's part of that cycle. They kind of think that you know, that excitement that they feel because they're always afraid is really, you know, that's what's normal in a relationship. And when they don't feel that, then they sometimes think that means there's something wrong in the relationship. So that's what we try to work on, to try to reframe that. you know, we hear it a lot from people when they come back. They say, "Oh, he's a nice guy, but he's boring." Well, it's because you're not always afraid, and that's what we have to try to talk about. That constant on alert, that constant fight or flight. You can kind of become almost addicted to that. I don't want to use that term lightly because I don't mean it in that context, but you just believe that that is a sign that this is a good relationship, or this is what a relationship is supposed to feel like, because that's how it's always been. So that's what we try to reframe for people.
I'm imagining frequently where you find abuse, you find children caught up in the swirl of that. Share a little dynamic of how you're working with the children.
Well, we have programs specifically for children, and we have a children's advocate that works directly with them, and then we actually have a child therapist that works with children who have both been victims of sexual violence and domestic violence, which is a little different than children who are witnessing the violence. I mean, it impacts them, but it's different in terms of how we are providing the programming. And with children, it's a little harder. You can't sit across from the table and just tell me how you feel.
Right.
You know, so we do things like play therapy. We have an outdoor garden on our rooftop that has a number of different areas. One is for music and movement. One is for art and nature. We have plants that grow. We have building blocks. And we use that area. It's called our Nature Explore Garden. And it was actually donated by the Mary Kay Foundation, you know, Mary Kay Cosmetics. And it's a research-based program proven to help children heal. You know, being in nature is one of the most resilience factors for children. And for a lot of children, especially children in urban areas, they're not getting a lot of that. So using those tools is how we are working with the children, connecting them to their environment and connecting them then to their parent and their own emotions.
This exchange triggered another thought. For some women or some families or some children, is it time to move on and say, you know, you probably would benefit from a change of venue if you've got relatives in North Carolina or somewhere else? Is it this
well,
may be
usually
a good time to move?
they will tell us that, and we do have a lot of times. We have a program. We have relocation funding, and then we use the reconnection program from the Y, where if there is family, they might be going back, because that often happens too. One of the ways to isolate is to just physically move. So they have moved with the abusive partner and now want to go back home, and they usually let us know that, and we help reconnect them, because they do need that support. I mean, everyone needs that support system, somewhere they feel comfortable, somewhere they think they can put down roots and regain their sense of self.
You're looking for volunteers, you're looking for
Always.
support, looking for help.
Always.
How can people connect with you?
Well, you can go on our website. That's probably the easiest way. There's a lot of volunteer opportunities. You'll see a lot of information about our 40th anniversary. So we're looking for people who have been with Berks Women in Crisis from the start, kind of getting that history. If you've ever been involved with Berks Women in Crisis at all over these 40 years, we want to hear from you, and we want to try to reconnect with you, and we want to try to reach out to the younger generation. We're doing some programs that are targeted to high school and college students to have them understand what we do and provide volunteer opportunities for them. Clothing drives, diaper drives, you know, all of those things are important. Helping out in the garden, helping to read to some of the kids. We have faith-based groups that do a lot of dinners for our residents. So there's a lot of volunteer opportunities, regardless of what your skill set is.
Very briefly, in a couple seconds that we have left, is there a skill set that's most needed?
You just have to really care. You have to care. That's what we want. We want people that want to connect with other people.
People need to feel loved.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm State Representative Mark Gillen. If you have any questions about what we've discussed today, feel free to contact me at my local office or through my website. That information will be shown in a moment. Thanks for watching, and please join me next time for Legislative Report.